Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Imperfect Cheerleader podcast. My name is Jasmine Neely, and I am your host. Today, we have somebody on the podcast that I'm super excited about. He is a mentor of mine and has been since 2017 when I first got started working in sports. He's just been such a great person in my life to keep me on track, to help me think about things that I would never think about, or expose me to different people and opportunities. So I'm so happy that Kevin Hyrams is on the Imperfect Cheerleader podcast today and that he's able to share some of the things that we've talked about together, that maybe we've worked on together, his experience, his knowledge and wisdom with you all. And he is an innovative business leader and an entrepreneur, and I'll save his bio for your reading pleasure, but you'll understand all of his corporate experience, how that helps him think about different business ideas and how he thinks about how the world works, and even how he can bring some of those ideas into the pro sports, pro dance space. So he's the founder of SideReal Global, and he does a lot in digital media, digital marketing, branding. We talk about NIL deals and the differences between dancers and players on a pro team and why those contracts are sort of different, what value that dancers bring to the table and how that's sort of changing now, and how we can help make a difference, put a word out there and change. We talk about leveraging dancers as brand ambassadors and really using that to help bring more worth and value to the dancers in terms of pay. We talk about leveraging innovation and performance. We talk about building resilience and the importance of starting over and resetting. So I think you're really going to get something out of this episode. And with that, I welcome Kevin Hyrams to the Imperfect Cheerleader podcast. Kevin Hyrams, welcome to the Imperfect Cheerleader podcast.
Thank you, Jasmine. Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
I am happy to have you here. And I want to jump right into the first question I have for you.
All right, let's go. Let's go.
And I want you to explain to the audience how you view failure.
Wow, you jumped right in, too. Well, initially, I'd say failure for me is not trying. So the things that I regret most in life are things that I've elected not to pursue. So that's probably the most damaging part for me, and probably the most detrimental aspect of what I define personally as failure. Then failure technically for me is not doing my best. I feel like I failed if I pursued something and then in reflection, I said I really didn't give it my all, and I feel like I failed because I let myself down, I let my brand down because I didn't give my all. And sometimes there's reasons that I may not have done it, but in the end, I still said I failed in some capacity. But beyond that, failure is a learning experience. So, I kind of flip it on what failure is. Failure is trying and learning and doing things better than I did the last time. So they talk a lot, people talk a lot about, well, you got to learn in that process, and that's true. People aren't always granted or afforded a time to see significant progress the next time you do something. So there are times that those increments are smaller, but if you really want it, you've got to do it. And I call, from a B school standpoint, you say fail fast, and there's an element of it that's true, that if you're pursuing something, you want to learn fast, and you want to, if you got to do a reset quickly and keep moving forward. So, failure by definition is part of the process, because I really don't know if I've done anything perfect where I haven't failed in some aspect of what I did. So, how can you be mad at failure? Because it's part of the natural process of living and trying to do the right thing. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I don't shy away from it.
And you talk about resetting and getting back into it, but how would you reset and like stay persistent toward whatever goal it is that you're trying to accomplish?
How do I reset? How do I do it? Well, I think that for me, a lot of it starts with why am I doing something to begin with? Do I really want this? Because, there are times that we do things, and I'll speak for me because I don't want to put words in other people's mouth. So there are times that I've done things for other people or for the wrong reasons. And then when you get these obstacles and you have to reset, it affords you a chance to really say, is this something I really want to do? Am I doing it for me? Am I doing it for other people? And that reset allows for me to recalibrate and say, yeah, I really want to do it. And, technically there are things that I really don't want to do, but I'm doing it for other people. So it makes me say, even if I personally wouldn't want to do it, I say it's in honor of someone, and that makes me get to the right reasons for doing it, and then kicks in that part of I want to be excellent at doing it, and then I feel like I've reset and recalibrated such that I can do it in the fashion that I would want to do it. So the reset process gives me a chance to have a level of reflection, and then recharge. I use that word a lot of times, recharge, because sometimes you just get beat down and, you just say, do I really want to do it? And your head gets right, and then you push through it, and I use the word grind through it, because rarely are things easy, So I feel like grinding is part of the process, that you just got to keep pushing. You got to keep pushing. You keep pushing. And I feel the rewards are there when a lot of times it's been some of the hardest things that I've had to do. But I've grinded it out, and I've gotten to a point where I want it to be. And it's amazing how people who doubted you will come around at a certain point and say, I didn't think you were going to make it. And, I don't like sharing when things are rough, but, clearly I sent signals to say I may have gotten frustrated or other things and moved on. So that's part of it. And then later, I think all of us have had people that marginalize us or doubted us, and you do things despite how they feel. And there's a part when you get to, let's just say, the finish line and you did well, and people come up to you. It's like, man, I knew you would make it. And in the back of your mind, it's like, yeah, right. And I'm a Chicagoan, so I may say, yeah, right, MF, and on and, that side. But, it's, again, things rarely just come easy. So I feel like that reset period is a natural part of what I have to do to keep grinding through it. And some people are smart enough to not have to do that. I kind of feel like I'm an average person that works harder than the next person. So I have to grind and have to do it that way. So
when was the last time that you had to stay persistent towards a goal that you feel like was a hard one to achieve, or maybe you even failed at?
last time. Probably had something yesterday.
Today? Yesterday?
Oh, that's a great question, Jasmine. Well, I'll share a personal story. I'll say it's because it was significant. And, for the audience, Jasmine and I have a great relationship. She's a friend, and she may call me her mentor, but I cherish the relationship. So my father was ill and was in home hospice last year, and he really wanted to stay at home. And he said, I want to die in the house. And the things that I felt I could have done better was to be with him more. But as a business person, he's in Chicago, I'm in North Carolina. I would travel there as often as I could, but he wanted to be home. And I tried to get him to come here, and he said, no, I want to stay in my house and I want to die. So the challenge was to balance my family needs and to attend as his primary caregiver to his needs and do the best that I could. And I think that it took me a while because he passed away on a Sunday, and I was going to go see him later that week. And it kind of haunted me that I wasn't there with him that day. And I felt like I failed as a caregiver that I wasn't there with him. Knowing he wanted to be in the house, knowing that maybe I could have been present. And I got the call from the nurse that was there, and he had a DNR, do not resuscitate. And literally, I'm on the phone with them through all of these things instead of being there. And that kind of bothered me. So the failure part was I wanted to be more present, but what I had to come to grips with is I did the best that I could as a caregiver for him. Um, and it probably says to me, I said maybe I should just move there knowing what his intent was. But that I consider that failure. And it took a while for me to reconcile that. Took me time with the family to get over that part. So that's probably a personal one. When it comes down to business, I don't have a lot of regrets. So it's hard for me to say that I failed and it was rough because, every day you'll make decisions on pricing or pursuing a client and a client doesn't sign with you and you go through it, then you get better. And sometimes they come back because, they go with somebody else and then they come to you saying, I should have gone with you in the first place, and you say, yeah, you should have. But, I learned from it. So business, as I said earlier, failure is part of it. But something as personal as my father probably is the one that was hard for me to reconcile, and probably the hardest thing for me to chalk up as I did everything right. I felt like I failed. So that's
Wow.
legitimate. That's probably the one that gets to me. The more recent one, because that happened last year, late last
Yeah. I'm so sorry that you feel like that or you felt like that. I just want you to know you did everything that you could in that moment. I
year.
know you can't take away like what happened but yeah, personal things and business things kind of are different, but um yeah, you are not a failure. I want you to
Thank
know
that.
that.
But it's you asked a great question, and that's just being truthful about it. So
Yeah.
that last and probably the most significant time in recent history. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about your decision to break off from your extensive and long corporate career. You've had a long career in corporate working through the digital landscape for companies like Bank of America and the Eastman Kodak Company. Why did you decide to step out on a limb and leave corporate after all of your wonderful career experiences?
first of all. Thank you for calling them all wonderful, and by all the grade that I have, yeah, I guess.
By the time, but
Yeah,
as much as we talk about like you being on, these airplanes, and I'm just like, they seem like wonderful experiences to me. I
well,
mean, I wasn't in it, but you got to tell me.
yeah. All right, so yeah, that they were great. So for the audience, Jasmine and I have talked about things. So I was able to, my wife and I, we went to the Olympics in Greece. I've had opportunities to be on private planes frequently for one reason or another, and been in a lot of international travel, and those things were awesome. And as a kid from south side of Chicago, public school, although public school was in high school, but, at the end of the day, go Christian Finger. The reality is, I felt like I was living a privileged life, but I earned it and I worked hard for it. So I will start by saying throughout my whole career in corporate, I've always had a company. So I've been in entrepreneurship, whether it be a small consulting practice that I would have. I was very involved with media and early on, like digital publishing. So I've always had small companies, but corporate was always my main thing. And, now they would call them side hustles or gigs. So I've always had that, probably since I was, a DJ in college, and I've DJed, even as adults. But 2012, so I came to Charlotte area and worked for Bank of America, and I came right in '07, and the financial collapse happened right around that time. So we went through, the financial sector went through a lot of transition. I was able to still do well during that period, but at a certain time, a little later, there were reduction in forces and buyouts for executives, particularly if you were at a high enough income level and the company was really purging. And I was not a legacy banker. As you said, I had a long career with Eastman Kodak Company. So I found myself in Charlotte, having to make a decision of, do I stay in corporate, which would likely mean a relocation for my family. Charlotte's a big banking town. And I had opportunities to move out west or move back in the Midwest. Frankly, my kids were, I've moved my family a lot during corporate. We were here. My family was assimilating well in Charlotte. It's great weather versus up north. And I said, what options do I have corporate wise? And in essence, I elected to buy a technology company and take a bigger dive into entrepreneurship. So I bought a technology company and then also launched the consulting practice. So we were running two things. And I felt like even though it was sooner to make that full transition than I originally thought, it was probably the right opportunity because of what my interest in keeping stability for my family in Charlotte. And I elected to do that. Now, it's quasi because the company I bought was in Greensboro, but I'm used to driving, a 2 hour or hour and a half drive was nothing, I could waste that amount of time driving from the south side to downtown Chicago. So I did that and I never regretted it because I felt like this allowed for me to pursue that entrepreneurial spirit full time like I wanted to. And the rest was history. There are a number of things that happened probably right after I made that dive into it. But I never regretted doing that because it allowed me to focus on my family and my kids and not worrying about being on airplanes and things. I could be present. And that was important. So trade off of a lifestyle for trying to be a great husband and a great father. And it worked out for me.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. And I know you have SideReal Global.
Yep.
So tell us where that fit into the picture, and if you could kind of tell us what it is and then explain it to us like a kindergartner. We want to know what SideReal Global is.
Kindergartner. All right. Um, so as I said, I had a technology company that I bought, and we're running that, but that was not big into the consulting practice, and I wanted to keep a consulting practice that allowed for me to look at management consulting. There's an aspect of technology consulting, but also I did a lot with media and entertainment, and the technology company really wasn't a good fit for those things. So I did SideReal Global, and I I typically I wanted a company that would bear my family name, but in this instance, I knew that I would likely have partners. So SideReal was a way to incorporate some other people that weren't family members into SideReal, and hence, SideReal. And I try to find names that may mean something. So, SideReal is basically measurements by relative of the stars. So instead of saying relative to the sun, you measure things relative to the stars. And I'm not really into, those things, but it was different and easy to, comprehend. And, when I did the logo designs and other things, you could play with it. But what SideReal Global was meant to be was, hence the name Global. I tend to like thinking globally and internationally, so global had to be part of the name. And what I did was set up different parts of the company, and by keeping it SideReal Global as kind of non-committal, I could set up SideReal Branding, which is a brand management part of the company that deals with how people's image is portrayed to your clients or elsewhere. SideReal Digital, which is about your digital voice, whether it be web work, app work, social media work. And then SideReal Media, which is very much involved with news media and what I would say video and audio work. And then, we have other parts, which is SideReal Innovation, which has recently been more prominent with the advent of AI. A lot of work there and looking at the innovation side. And I guess for a kindergartner, it's, anything and everything to think of how you rework something that's known. So we say innovation, we can say, how do you read better? How do you talk better? How do you function better? Innovation kind of captures that. So it's kind of ambiguous, but in reality, it affords us to really get into things that, customarily people would put in boxes. The innovation practice allows us to blow those things up and start over and do things. So those are the main aspects of SideReal Global. And then SideReal Global allows me to also invest in and take equity position in companies. So if it's a startup company that I think is really awesome, it would be under the SideReal Global banner, but it allows me to take to be an owner in a company. Sometimes, and most times, it's silent owners. Most times, it's minority owners. And, eventually, if it's successful, I may choose to buy that company and make it part of my own, or sell off my assets and move on. But to a kindergartner, I like helping people, and sometimes they don't have a lot of money. So I would say, well, let me take a part of the ownership. I'll put in my money and my time, And if we're successful, then we're both successful, or we're all successful. And if I'm not, then we gave it a good effort, and we maybe, in a couple of instances, do something new and exciting and make money at it together. So SideReal Global is like the holding company that allows all those entities to flourish the best way that I can try to make it happen with the people that are part of the group. So,
Wow, that's awesome.
yeah.
Do you have, so you had the consulting company. How many companies did you have in between the consulting company and then when you started SideReal Global? Were there other ones in between there, or was it just it did go from the consulting and you realized there was a need that the consulting didn't fill, so you
Yeah.
started SideReal Global?
Well, great question. I had other companies are concurrently with SideReal Global. One is this great company with a partner. The company was called With These Hands DJ Academy. It was actually With These Hands LLC, but we had a DJ Academy, and we taught people how to DJ, and that was a great business and really flourished until the pandemic happened, which changed a lot of things for a lot of people. But that was not part of SideReal Global, but it was part of the journey. We had a great client, Sprite brand. We did DJ competitions, and things like that. So that was one of the things that we did. The evolution of SideReal Global really was, let's say I started a consulting practice with a client. We're talking about their brand, and they did not have a strong digital presence. So they're saying, we're looking at their website, it may have been a Wix site and some other things. And they're like, I really need a website. So we start talking it, and then we would go out and get bids for how doing those websites and things. And then we would do the work, and we weren't pleased. So out of need, I developed SideReal Digital, would allow us to serve our consulting clients and develop their websites and then do their apps and then do their social media strategies. So that became so robust that it became a separate entity, and that's how things went. Then we would get into, they needed to either do commercials or they needed to do more short form video to put in social media. So then SideReal Media evolved because I had, great people with voiceover, I had great people for film and video. So it allowed for us to just keep serving my consulting companies with different services under that banner. And that's how really the growth of SideReal Global happened. I'd love to say that I scripted it all like that, but the reality was it was a need to serve my clients the best way that I could. And it allowed for me to bring in resources to serve my client the best way that I could in an affordable way, because I could not take a full aspect of what, say, my fees would be. I would kind of bundle those fees, and then we would focus more on getting the work done and execute it with some great talent that I would have working on our team. So that's how, that part of the business evolved. But, I had other companies, I had other interests, and those did well, in their own means. So I try to have some level of separation and some thoughts of, what companies I do or not. I own a chemical company that, functions or had been functioning. The tariffs have kind of brought a few things that we're working through now. I'll probably rebrand it and bring some stuff onshore for manufacturing. But, every opportunity warrants, how do we do things today? How do we do things, I do it today, a year, 3 years, 5 year, 10-year plan. And that's how I try to think through the business aspects, when I'm thinking of, do I bring it in? Do I operate it separately? Do I joint venture? Do I take equity? Those are all things that have to go in my mind as I think through those, so to speak.
It sounds like you had like you started something and then you realized that somebody needed something that you didn't offer, and then so you went and did that, and then
Yep.
you realized something else that you didn't offer. So it's kind of like stepping stones where you found these problems and you're trying to solve for them.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that's how you got to where you have all these entities that you are servicing. You
That's
know,
right.
you're servicing other people with them. So I think
That's right.
that's really cool. You found the opportunity.
That's right. And I think a lot of us, I mean, I like to say, um, when you're of modest means, I'll never say that I was poor, but I'll say, growing up, we had modest means, and grandparents who were poor always would talk about, you make your own paths. So when if I'm serving a client and they're having problems, I'm trying to make a path for them to be successful. And those paths allow for us both to find opportunities. And not all of them would use me for one, two, or three. Let's say I didn't do every client's website. Some were just more complex and I had time and we would find the right people. But there were enough of them that I could do in house and help them, So to your point, it grew naturally because I tried to do my best to help my client the best way that I could. And I feel like that was the success of the company, so to speak, or is the company.
Yeah. So I know you are not regularly in the dance world, right?
Right?
But unless you're talking to me, really.
Yep.
But what do you think? You talked about innovation um, as you were talking about, growing your companies. And but I want to know what you think about innovation and modernization and what that has to do with performers and dancers. From what you've seen, from what we've talked about, what do you think innovation has to do with that? And how could dancers and performers use innovation to enhance their careers?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, well, I'll just be very candid with your audience. Talking to you and learning about the world of dance is actually fascinating because it showed me and exposed me to a world that I would not have been exposed to outside of, as I said, I DJ'd. So the music aspect and you all dancing to music would be it. But just understanding the complexities and the discipline and all the things that go into being an elite dance performer is what was fascinating. So, kudos. And that's what drew me into, having a conversation. Um, that's a loaded question because in in the world that you've described, particularly working with NFL, cheerleading, or dancing, I'll just say dancing, NBA, or any of it, that industry is technically a business. You all exist because you're serving a business need, just like the athletes exist to serve a business need. And they make no bones about it, as owner. Everyone is there to serve a purpose for business. So when I think of, the elite dancers, I default back to what business needs are you serving and how do you serve that business need for the teams that you are connected to. So, you know, if I were to kind of dissect dancers and what you all are doing, you typically create a phenomenal experience for the audience that's at the stadium or at the arena. And you are there to make that for those people that are paying high price ticket dollars and concessions. And I'm like, okay, if I put it in that framework, because TV is different. Many times you don't see dancers when you're watching TV. So it's really about that in that experience for in person. And innovation to me is, how are you performing what some of your fundamental things are, which are your routines? How crisp are you with that? How dynamic are you with that? So if you're going to be an elite performer, you've got to master that craft. And today, you've got video tools that perhaps were not as available before to really analyze, are you in unison with the other dancers? Or if you've got a specific role, are you optimizing? Are you doing what people are expecting you to do? And are you looking the way people want? And I'm not talking about, body type. I'm talking about how your uniforms are, coordinated, and all of those things that they ask you to do. So the innovation that I think of are you performing at that level? Are you using the tools so when you step on that field or on the court, you're hitting those marks every time? Then I think about, which gets into the other parts, are you trying to learn why you're there enough? Because I've learned how you make appearances in the suites and other things. So to me, it's, do you have a great personality such that the people that you're with or you're being exposed to really see that you're welcoming and that you're personable and all those things that make people want you to come to that suite or want you to be part of their lives while they're at the stadium. You and I both know there are people that look like they go through the motions when they're there. And as a fan, I would probably pick up on that. So it's a matter of, you need to be on point when you're on the field. You need to be on point when you're at the stadium. It is all aspects. And that personality aspect is a part of the technology and innovation, in that, you will be surprised that if you learn the things of whether it's NFL or NBA and have a command of what's going on in that space, people talk to you, and if you're coming across as knowledgeable, that's helping to change the perception of the industry.
Mm-hmm.
You and I talk about the stereotypes that exist for dancers, and I'm like, well, aren't people reading your bios? And really, they probably are not. I'm probably one of the people that really cares. I'm looking at, doctors or nurses and consultants, and, y'all got big jobs. They see you as a dancer, and I'm like, you have an opportunity to show them who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And you got those opportunities. Don't waste them. And that's the customer experience side that we talk about. So you need to master that. Then there's the part that people really don't see, which is, how are you leading that dance team? How are you engaging with making sure that dance team is respected, whether it's in the clubhouse or with the business teams, with the marketing teams and others, because, you and I talk a lot about, I think you are undervalued. So let's flip it and let's make sure that people know they need to value your time and your presence, and mean that you're there to take care of business. You're there to serve a need. And those, I'm not saying don't enjoy dance, but I'm saying if you're working for an NFL team or an NBA team, or I guess, soccer, I don't care what it is, I'll even say college athletics is business. So if you're on a college dance team, same thing. You're there to take care of business. And you need to approach it as you taking care of business. And you need to have that attitude that, I'm here. Yes, I'm going to have fun. I'm going to do other things, but I'm going to be on point. I'm going to be on time. I'm going to hit my marks. I'm going to have a great team, respect the other people around you, be a leader on that team, and make them know that you're here to take care of business just the way they would expect a captain on the team to be. Just think of how powerful it is if a dance team has 20 ladies or 20 women or 20 men and women, and all of you all are on point, and they're like, man, this is a business group.
Mm-hmm.
That's a powerful thing.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
to me, that's part of the innovation. Innovation doesn't mean that you invent something. It means process improvements. So it's about getting everybody that's on that team to look at it from the aspect of we're part of a business. We play a role, and make the team owners and management know you all add value to that experience, and you all are there to help them make money, and in return you expect them to give you the respect for them helping, you contributing to make that money. And that's what I see. So
Yeah, I think it's really interesting you talk about being in these rooms. Maybe there's pro cheerleaders that are at a appearance where maybe the owner is there, or maybe there's some high profile individuals that are there. And I just remember when I was a pro cheerleader in the NFL, I would be at some of these appearances, and sometimes you just think about, like, okay, if these people were to come talk to me, like, how would I strike up a conversation with them? How would I show them that I am bringing value to this organization or to this team? And now I think I just thought about this, about the innovation piece. And when you brought it up, I think about, like, you can use Chat GPT now to even come up with questions before that appearance. And you're like, how do you strike up a conversation? If I am a pro cheerleader, how do I strike up a conversation with the owner that's appropriate in an environment where I'm at an appearance?
that's right.
It's so easy. You can really just take 2 to 3 questions that you have in the back of your mind and be prepared if you're in that if you're in that type of environment. And even if it's not high profile individuals, it could be fans. You could change that to, how do I approach fans and strike up a conversation? Because the job is not just to be a dancer for the team; it's to be a brand ambassador. And so
that's right.
that's part of the job. And I think a lot of women may come into it not thinking that they have to play that role, and they just have to be a good dancer. But that's just part of the job.
Not that you hit it. When you're an elite dancer, you're a brand ambassador. That's the right word, because you are part of that machine of a team. Just like the athletes are part of a machine of a team, just like the marketing teams are part of that, just like ticket sales are part of that machine, you're part of that. But you're a very visible part of that team, and you connect with clients in ways that other people can't. And it is, I use the word sub-optimizing. That's not a kindergarten word, so maybe I'll just say people look to you and they have an impression of that team through you. And don't squander that opportunity, because you have a chance to supplant or change people's mind of the team, of the dance industry as a whole, and certainly of you. And like you said, you've got things at your fingertips now that you can go to, with AI, to just have just nuggets of things that make them say, Dad, they were pretty sharp, or even talk about your team. I mean, heck, what's your thought of our draft last year? And they'll probably look at you like, huh? I guarantee you, if you're a ticket holder or you own one of those suites, you care about that draft. And the fact that you ask them that question, they're like, okay. But if you ask the question, just have some response your own, because they may say, well, what do you think?
You should have your own questions answered.
So there you go. So that's the right way. So yeah. So I me. I mean, I love what you all are doing. In terms of the industry and the things that you and I talk about, which I'll just tell the audience, I'm like, I want NIL opportunities for dance, because you all are just as integral in the brand of the team and the sport as anyone else. So let's not squander those opportunities to enjoy some of the benefits of it. And I know, Jasmine, we'll have another podcast later about NIL just in its own, because it's important.
It is important.
So.
Yeah. And I'm sure that there are dancers, current dance pro cheerleaders right now that are probably, we always say we do it because we love it, but it has come up before, I'm sure, about the pay. And even if, I don't know if you've watched the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders on Netflix, but it comes up there and they talk about, yeah, we do it because we love it, but we don't do it because we want to get paid a certain amount. But you see the hard work that goes into it. You see the stress. You see the anxiety. You see how much dedication and time and money is put into being a pro cheerleader, or even going through the audition process, the travel, all of this stuff. So I think it's a valid argument to be made. And I think there has to be some type of innovation there when it comes to dancer and pro cheerleader pay. I think that that's an area for these teams to kind of consider and think about the actual value that a dance team can bring to a pro sports team.
Yes, and the time is now to do that. You know, I laugh when the athletes are being asked. All of them say, "I love the game." None of them come back and say, "Oh, I just do it for the money." They all say, "I love the game." But will you take a big contract or a small contract?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's going to take the big contract. And they negotiate in order to get that big contract. Why does it have to be different for the dance team?
Right. And I think if they do have some type of contractual agreement where it's, you know, a different set of rules when it comes to, like, in terms of pay, I think more things can be brought into the picture. Maybe there's a pro cheer dance competition, or maybe there's I don't know. I'm just thinking of things that haven't been done before. You can bring in a whole set of new industry practices that maybe couldn't have been done before because of the way that the industry has been looked at, or all those lawsuits that happened a couple years ago. But if it's taken more respect, well, not that it's not respected, but if dancers are more respected in terms of pay, then there could be some what am I trying to say? There could be some really good outcomes in terms of the impact that it could make on sports in general.
Yes, there is, and if we were to really dissect how we could approach it, and like you and I talked, and I hope that the things you're doing, Jasmine, and the things that we've been talking about offline, that you'll be one of those leaders that help reshape how dance is being viewed and how NIL plays a positive role. So in our mind, we want to have those conversations with the owners, because ultimately the owners they have their investments that they've made and they want great returns. So we talk about how do we help generate larger returns for, let's say, the business of sports through the dance team. It may mean that there are different ways that you operate in order to generate NIL opportunities. It may be more of that, how do you maximize the brand ambassador part of what you do to bring more people in the stadium and to have people have even better experiences while they're in the stadium. And then a big nugget for sports is that TV side. So how can dance teams help on the TV side? Like you said, it's the competition. You know, Dallas Cowboy has that they have a cachet mainly because they've got longevity and a lot of great things for them. But they're not the only ones, you know, what I've seen, you know. So how do we raise the level of the lake for everyone And if Dallas wins more than somebody else, there's market dynamics.
Hmm.
People paid as much as people will spend. So if people will spend more for that, okay. But I don't think that anyone from Dallas would say they wouldn't support everyone winning. That's part of it. And that's where we want to get to, well, I want to get through with you as somebody that I've got great respect for and knowing how you work. I want to help you get there because it's that important.
It
So,
is important. Yeah. And I just think about the TV opportunities, like you said, like there's so many opportunities to bring in, well, like big names, former cheerleaders that people don't know were former cheerleaders that are now big celebrities now, like Jill Marie Jones, who was on Girlfriends, who was Dallas Cowboys cheerleader, or even, they don't have to be former cheerleaders. They could be judges. Like I'm thinking of a pageant, there could be judges, celebrity judges that come in and if they that competition idea did happen, they come in and judge, and it's like a live televised event. I think there's so many great opportunities. I do see both sides. Like, would it take away from the in-game experience? I don't know. I think there's work around it. Would it take away from the mystique of a pro dancer or a pro cheerleader? There are counter arguments to be made. I definitely think, but I definitely like you did talk about the TV time that the dancers don't really get, unless you go to the game, or you go to the arena or the soccer game. There could be more opportunities for dancers to show themselves on TV during
yeah,
those opportunities.
that's right.
So
That's
yeah,
right.
I just don't know if owners are thinking about it. Probably not, but I think there's if they're thinking of it as a business, there's definitely, I think, some opportunities and revenue to be made there.
There is. And, you know, as I kind of shared with my business kind of growing naturally based upon need, I see the same thing happening with the dance team. They may not have been thinking in the context that you've been thinking. So we make them think that way. And then
Hmm.
we prove that it's a benefit. So I'm not scared. I have this slogan, that I've been using, like embracing fearlessness. So if I was scared of doing something before, I'm like, I, part of it, I admit, I'm getting older. So I'm like, I've got more time behind me than I've got in front of me. So I'm like, I ain't got time to be scared. So I need to be doing things and just stepping out. And if somebody gonna get hit, as they say, the first man through the door is the one that gets shot. If I gotta get shot, okay. But it's gonna benefit some other people, and they're gonna hear some choice words while I'm getting shot along the way.
Let's not put that into the atmosphere. We hope that you
But I'm
don't
gonna
get
keep
shot.
going. But I'm like, why not? I mean, it's time for that. And I mean, it's such a great time for women's sports. I mean, I'm looking at how the WNBA is moving, and it's phenomenal, and it's pushed into the college ranks. Women's soccer. I mean, it's just so much momentum, and I'm like, you'd get support across the board for what the dance team is doing, and for me, I want to be part of that movement. Selfishly, I want to be one of the ones that help propel dance into a whole new stratosphere of what's possible. And I would feel failure for me, like I said, if I don't even try.
Hmm.
So let's try.
Let's try. And I'm so like this is so refreshing to hear somebody that doesn't come from the dance world to really care about it, because sometimes I feel like me or my former teammates or friends that I grew up dancing with, they might feel, or even former dancers that I don't even know, they might feel very passionate about it, but you don't hear it coming from people that don't really understand it. And I appreciate you for seeking to understand the dance world and the pro cheer world and all of it, so that you know we can make it better. So I want to say thank you for seeking to understand and just being curious.
Well, you always give me way too much credit, but you got to take some for that. If not all of it, or let's just say the majority of it. I talk about authenticity with you and how we met, and it had nothing to do with dance initially. It's just you being a great person. And later did I find out that you were a pro NFL cheerleader, and I'm like, she's so down to earth. I'm like, cool. Now my boys gave me just credit. They're like, man, an NFL cheerleader? I'm like, yeah. And then, I'm like, man, don't talk to me, But in the end, I have to feel that most of the dancers are just as down to earth as you are, and just genuine people. And I'm like, okay, so tell me more about this world that you live in, because I'm not a pro athlete. I don't live in that world. I don't know much about how you all function, but to your point, I am curious, and that's part of my nature in business, is to be curious and look for opportunities that I may not have seen before. And you were very gracious to spend time to educate me on it in a very authentic way. You tell me the good, bad, indifferent things about dance, and it allowed for me to look at it differently than I would have otherwise. And that just gets me excited to say there's just so much that we could try. And if we fail, we'll fail fast, so to speak, and we'll keep going. But I think that there's merit in this one.
I definitely do. So in your opinion, why do you think pro dancers aren't paid more?
I don't think we put forth the business case. I mean, usually you say, we just haven't proved it. We just haven't put it into language that business owners know and prove the point. We talk about test cases, and then we do the analytics, and nowadays it's like analytics, and, we talk about, okay, if we look at it as the in arena experience and how that's augmented, and you could probably extract 20% more revenue by this and that. We just got to find the language to say it's a great investment to do this, and people that are sharing in that upside, the performance of everything is enhanced. And that's what we've got to do. I mean, I don't know if I would have the passion if I didn't think it was a great business deal for everybody. It's not it's not a zero-sum game. The owners can't all win and the dancers all lose. It's got to be a winning scenario for everyone. And obviously, the power right now is with the owners because they control a lot of those factors. So we show them how they win. But then everyone wins. And ultimately, the customer wins because you all are doing so much more to help the client or the attendees. And that's why I can say, I know I'm passionate because I see a vision of everyone winning. So that's what's there. And the flip side is, why haven't we taken the value? I don't think we've been assertive to demand that that the dance teams should be paid that way. There's a part of us, let's just say people that have maybe historically been marginalized in one aspect or another. There are times that we may not have the confidence to do things because, A, we've not done it before. We've always been told it's always been this way. So you say, why try? Because you're going to hit your head up against the wall and you just get a bloody head, but the wall don't move. The reality is, sometimes that wall gets chipped away, and as more people start chipping at that wall, it starts to crumble and other things. So it's more of us kind of thing. That's kind of a Star Wars line that I kind of saw, but it's reality. There's more good people wanting the right things. And if we just do things smarter, using the tools that are available, speak the language of the people that may, quote unquote, have the power, I think we'll be surprised at what our confidence, better self-confidence has, and the power that we do wield, that we haven't wielded, we can maybe make change. So
Yeah.
it's on both sides that we haven't achieved success yet, so to speak. So.
Yeah. What do you think in the next 10 to 15 years, besides the NIL deals that will be made, what do you think would be the next big trend in the dance world in terms of like innovation and trends and technology and news? Can you think of anything else besides what we went through?
Well, to be honest with you, and I learned this, when my wife works at a college, Presbyterian college in Clinton, South Carolina. They have a team called the Acrobat team, and they do dance and acrobats and other things. So it's a sport. I know the things that you do, and it's more than what the acrobat or the act team does and others. But I see it emerging as a bigger and evolving as a bigger sport, or with an entertainment value on its own. That there are parts of what you do that is very athletic, as you and I talked about, very athletic, and it requires precision and all of that. Then there's an entertainment value of just how you all carry yourself and the things that you all do and how you go about it, that's people want to watch. I mean, there are cheerleading competitions today that's there, but what's wrong with taking that and enhancing it so that you get more viewers looking at that and doing that? And that will take some reimagination. I don't have all those answers. Ultimately, I see it being interactive at a certain point. There's going to be a heavy of avatar type things that you, Jasmine, will have an avatar made of people that's going to have you. Almost like today, you've got, my youngest is big in, like Madden and NBA 2K. They're of the athletes. What happens if they're same products for a dancer?
Like a dance game.
Yeah.
Or like animated people from the team.
All of that.
I want to be Jessica today.
and they get to shape, just like players, you get to shape your own image, and you get to do things differently, and we laugh. There used to be a thing called, it was like a competition for the stars. So all you had to do was to be an athlete or entertainer, and then you come up with all these different games and competitions that they do. So again, you become the brand. You as Jasmine are part of that brand, and you're attached to dance. So your celebrity appeal is that you are part of dance. That dance is part of your brand, and you command respect and things just like an actor or actress commands respect for what they do. You get that same level of respect, but it crosses into all these different areas that people get to participate in. So again, how do we take dance and what you do and elevate you from a socioeconomic side to be highly regarded, and then participate as celebrities today, participate in all these different endeavors? That's a vision that can be accomplished, but it'll take some work. And the reason I'm saying all of this, this is your podcast, and to me, you're one of the utmost forefront leaders in this space. I want to be attached to you and to the progress that you and people like you have. So I'm not a person that I'll have secrets and just say, well, y'all got to wait till we do it. I don't mind telling you where we want to go, but I'll tell your audience, and I'll look into the camera. I want you to be part of our team. So subscribe to the Imperfect Cheerleader podcast, but connect with Jasmine, because I'm connecting with Jasmine and I'm going to be riding the Jasmine wave. But my goal is to give Jasmine the support and find the right people such that everybody wins. And that's kind of where I want to see it, and why I was honored to even get a chance to talk, openly, because these are the kind of conversations, Jasmine, you and I get to have, offline. So I just get to say it in a more public forum.
Yeah, no, I'm super excited for what's to come in the future, and I think a Sims game might be really cool if it was like dancer related, Maybe, I don't know if it's already out there. I don't really know that much about Sims, but I have friends that are on Sims and they just set up their own little avatar and they're like, oh, my Sims person's going to the grocery store. I think that would be a really cool, innovative, and it's kind of like meta. Like you're in your own little world.
Yeah. Well, in the end, I laugh, I'm a geek, so I did go to B school and all that. But, one of the case studies that we started, early on, I think every person that got an MBA probably read like the FedEx case study. But in essence, FedEx, their innovation wasn't that they invented the overnight delivery business. You had UPS, you had the post office. They just came up with a way to make it better. And, the way they went about it, a hub and spoke model, to go through Memphis, they did some things, eventually they evolved, but they made the process better. And, Southwest Airlines, low cost carrier, there were already airlines. They just did something different and made it better. So again, that part of embracing fearlessness is, so what? Somebody else is doing it. Let's just do it better. Competition makes us all sharper. And yeah, you'd like to do something and get patents and things, but patents are awarded for doing processes differently and better. So you can get a patent for something that you refined and done something better on. So yeah, that may be a Sims game, but you'd have a heck of a better Sims game than what's already out there. So if that's the thing, which sounds pretty cool to me, then do a better Sims game. Instead of grocery store, y'all flying for a competition in Beijing, and, it could be what airline do you do? And maybe you're on a private plane and, that's a long haul. So you need a big private jet, instead of another. So, you got to look at the right classes. That's right. So those are all things that will be fun.
Yeah,
those will be
for
fun.
sure. No, I don't want to think about this, but there have been pro dance teams that have been eliminated. There are some NFL teams that maybe had teams and don't have teams. I'm sure it's happened in the NBA and other teams too.
Mm-hmm.
And you've also seen in the past where there have been arts programs cut from schools, public schools. And I think that's a problem because I think we do need the arts. So what do you think would happen? And I don't want this to happen, not putting it, let me knock on wood. What do you think would happen if organizations completely eliminated dance, pro sport dance and pro sports?
Yeah.
What if they just eliminated it?
Yeah. Well, you bring up one, again, native Chicagoan, Bears fan, all of that. And the Bears don't have a dance team, if I recall.
True. Yep, they don't.
I think they used to be called the Honey Bears,
I think you're right, yeah.
So
props to you for knowing that.
Thank you. I'm an old man and I got a lot of issues, but let's just say I was a guy, and the Honey Bears were, they were some fine women. So shame on me for looking at them and all those things that we say. We like marginalized, I was probably guilty of all that until I became more enlightened. Thank you. But yes, so I'm aware that teams have, eliminated dancing. I think part of it is to, first, it goes back to the value of having the dance team on the franchise. And I think teams that maybe like the Bears, if the right people put forth the business case why dance teams would be important to that ownership group, and the Bears have a long-term ownership group that, they're going through negotiations for a new stadium and other things. I think they're going to have to get another stadium for Chicago, which I hope will be, downtown area, and they've got able to do it, and I digress. But maybe there's an opportunity to revisit the dance teams when that new stadium comes in, because again, it's what's that experience like for the fan, and how can those dancers really add to that experience? And I think there's merit in doing that. So to get to your question, I think a lot of it is people have phased out dance teams because they haven't fully understood the value that the dance teams bring to that experience. Certainly, we've already identified there's not a lot of value today shown for the TV audience, because you all typically aren't on TV. They cut to commercials, you all may dance to the team there, you're on the big Megatron or whatever they're called now, they just call them the big flat panels and other stuff. But, the in-person experience maybe gets to see you, but the TV audience doesn't. And there's so much money in TV that, it's real easy to just put your energy around the other things. The dance groups need to impart back in to talk about how there's value for dancers to be part of that experience. So I think it's short-sighted, and I think it's an easy way to find ways to cut costs. I think it's another way if people feel that it's perception that the dance teams are marginalized people, meaning they're only thinking of the dancers as sex objects. Why do the women have to be viewed this way? Skimpy uniforms. All the guys care about is, how short the shorts are and how much leg and how low they are, and if people have cup sizes or not. I heard all of them, and I'm not saying they're not valid in terms of how people may perceive it. It's up to us on the dance side to reshape how dancers are being perceived and talk about, hey, there's nothing wrong with being fine, first of all. Nothing wrong with y'all, all y'all fine women out there. Brother, appreciate y'all. Ain't nothing wrong with it. But we've talked about earlier, there's more depth than just being fine. And we all know fine fades at a certain point, regardless for all of us in most people's eyes. And then there's fine to the beholder by body type and other things, which I know, Jasmine, you and I talk about. Dancers come in all shapes, sizes, all of that. So we've got to help change that, because we can't rely upon other people to change how people see us. And I'm putting myself in your group because I want to be on your side having those conversations with owners to say, you need to think of us differently, and we'll tell you why you need to, and prove why it's a great investment for you to do that. Now, if we clear those hurdles, and let's say some women's group that may say, oh, that's just a cover, they still look at it. There's just some things, you ain't going to please everybody. So there's always going to be some naysayer. So let's just do that. But let's make the point. And then you've got the issue with arts, that arts aren't appreciated. I remember we were doing STEM, and I'm a geek, but I used to put STEAM instead of STEM, it's to put the arts in the equation so that there's a level of respect for artists, and I'll be forthright to say most artists that I know are very technically capable. Many of them are brilliant. Many of them are brilliant in math. they know geometry, they know a lot of things that don't get brought out when you just say STEM. So I just kind of said it's STEAM with the A. And I think it's a mistake to keep pushing those programs out because art is such a big part of our human experience in how we live. You know, music is a lot of science, but it's a lot of art. And think of how our world would be absent of music and the diversity. So
That would be terrible.
Yeah, you can't just cut that out. And I
Mm-mm.
just think people take easy pathways because they may say, oh, that's a woke way to look at things. I mean, woke ain't a bad word. People made it a bad word, but woke ain't a bad word. So you know what? Maybe we'll find another word just so you can't say woke. But arts needs to be part of programs, and just think of how many kids you damage because they're not exposed to the arts. And I don't want to get on those soapboxes. So dance is part of art, but it's also, and this is where your pro teams come, the athleticism that's involved with dance, the technical details you all go through, the timing, all of that is at an elite level. And I think it's a disservice to just say all y'all do is go out and dance, because most of them don't see what you all put your bodies through, and more so the mental tenacity that you need to have to even be on the team, through the rejection, through the practice, all the sacrifices you make on the job, having to not have breaks because you got to go to an event, you know, and maybe even take personal time so you can make the event and then come back. So if people don't see it, they, you know, people don't understand it. And I've just been afforded to get to hear from you the things that the average person may not get to hear. And all that does is elevate the level of respect that I have to have for what you do when people like you. Mm-hmm. So those are the things. And, you know, I hate to say it, but most people care about money and stuff. So we got to turn it into economic decisions of, you know, when you cut out the arts, not only are you, I'll use the word again, sub-optimizing, but you're shortchanging opportunities for income in a lot of ways when you cut that out. But more so on a human standpoint, when you cut out the arts, you really cut out part of the really great aspects of the human experience, which, you know, most of us care about, but may not talk a lot about. Hope that answers your question.
It does. It definitely does. And I want to talk about a little bit about success and how you define success in your life. How do you define success in your life? And then how do you define success in others? I'm always fascinated by people. Speaking of, you talked about money. A lot of people define success about in terms of like how much money you make. Is that true for you? Is that how you define success in your life? Is that how you define success in others?
Well, that's a great question. I'll first start off by saying success for me has evolved. Early in my career, it was about money. So I felt success was tied to income and toys, you know, and I'll be the first one to say I you know, when I was in my late teens, I was like, by 30, I was going to be a multimillionaire, and people were liking Ferraris, and I'm like, again, kind of culture. I said, I think I'm going to like Lamborghinis. So I'm like, I'm going to have 2 Lamborghinis, you know, I'm going to have, I like convertibles. So I'm like, I'm going to have at least one Mercedes 12-cylinder. Back then it was a rag top, then it became a hard top retractable. And then I was a kid and loved vets, so I was going to have a vet convertible. So let's just say I was going to have me a fleet of cars. I was going to have a big crib. I was going to have a lot of money, and, you know, I was going to be living a life of exuberance. And then perspective change, usually around when you have a family and, which early on probably wasn't in the cards, because I probably thought that I was going to be a multimillionaire in my 30s and probably be dead by 45. So I really didn't think I was going to have kids until I did the math. And like, not many people have my last name. So I needed to have a family just to keep the legacy of my name going. So that part of it. But to get to your question, that's what success meant. And I remember I told that to a teacher when I was in college, and he looked at me and said, "You got your priorities wrong." And I use a choice word, which usually has the letters MF. And I'm like, "You can't define success for me." And he looked at me, and I think I made up because I needed a good grade. So I swallowed my pride. But that was it. Success then became, for me, am I getting better? And it was, all right, I'm starting from a point, and I'll just say I played baseball. I had ambitions of going pro. I'm from an age before Tommy John surgery was really big, and certainly I didn't have money to get my right elbow worked on. So I was part of that group that threw out an arm, and I was a pitcher, so pitching career was kind of done. In hindsight, had I done a few things differently, I probably could have gone to a school that would have paid for it, and maybe I'd have had that money and then did what Magic Johnson did, had a great pro career, reinvested it, and be on, doing well. So Magic, if you hear this, man, you kind of one of my idols, dude. In essence, it was to get better. So success is to always get better. And I do a thing where I call it the power of ampersand, which is the power of and. So I could be doing something well today, but I say, what would it look like if I'm even better at it tomorrow? So that's a driver for me. Success is, technically continuous improvement is kind of a thing we'll say from a manufacturing standpoint. But, in the reality, if I'm getting better every day, being successful, then it's, what I'm being successful at. And I redefine my success to not really be about me. It's really about how I support the people I care about. Success for me has been, selfishly, my wife, who chose to go into ministry, smart lady, but, in the end, it meant that I needed to make sacrifices so she can get her 2 masters and then her Duke divinity degree, so she's a reverend doctor. I probably have more pride for that than anything because I feel like I contributed to her success in that I took some things off of her plate in order to ensure that she could pursue the things that she wanted to do. Same with my kids, my 3 kids that are adult kids now, but I had to make sacrifices after leaving corporate to be more present. And then there are, surgeries that I had with some things that, probably hindered my ability for mobility. But in the end, I was around where instead of being on airplanes and in different cities, that I had a chance to be with them during their high school years that I don't think I would have had opportunities to do had I made different career decisions. And seeing them flourish, I've got, my daughter is a physician now, and my son's, studying to be a physician or about to. And my oldest son, who probably is also a hero, is on the spectrum, but he overcame a lot of challenges, and to be supportive of him so that he can realize his best life is what makes me feel successful as a dad and a husband. And that's probably more important than the business side. So now I look at, I want to have a comfortable lifestyle, and I'm setting it up so that I've got annuity streams that will be here after I'm gone. But I'm not a multimillionaire. Do I still want it? Yeah. Do I still think I'll get it? Yeah. Matter of fact, I'd say I'm going to be a multi-billionaire. That dream doesn't leave, but that's not where I put my success with. That's kind of a bonus that I'll make a lot of money. Because there's people right now that I see that have a lot of money, but they have no character. And I'd rather have all the character that my dad enforced in me and do the right things as a dad, a husband and a friend to like you, Jasmine. When you're successful with not just this podcast, but the professional cheerleader, your business, and all the other things that you and I talk about, I get a lot of joy in that. I'll be successful if I'm helping you do that, and then all the things we talked about today. So that's how I define success is, getting better every day and helping a lot of other people. And, in full disclosure, I told you, I feel like I haven't done enough for you. So I keep saying, how do I do more to help you? Because I feel like I still have things that I could do to help you be more successful in what you're looking at doing. So that's a driver for me. And that's when you tell me, Kevin, thank you, I've really gotten a lot of the things that I wanted to get accomplished. I'll feel really good when I can get you to say those things. So those are kind of the drivers for me of success. And I shared with you, things with my dad. So, and honoring my family's name well is really important. The things that my dad reinforced, and there's not a lot of people with my last name. So I feel like I carry a legacy to do well for that name. And I want to do the best that I can. So success is, doing well for that.
Well, I'm sure your dad would be very proud of you and is very proud of you. And I want to say that you already have done so much for me. So I already thank you for everything that you've done. So
Well, you always kind. So, but thank you. Remember the power of ampersand. So I'm gonna keep doing it. So
yes. I'd like to wrap up by talking about some of the impacts that women have had and made in your life. As one of the only men, maybe you're number two, I think. I know you want to be number one, that has graced this show with your presence.
okay. Okay.
What valuable lessons have women in your life taught you?
Wow. Well, let me put this disclaimer. Besides my mama bringing me in this world, which I'm eternally grateful for,
Amen.
I've had women in my life major influence from day one. But I do want to say, as I've kind of shared, my father was very present in my life. Even though my parents divorced when I was very young, he was very present, and I'm very grateful. So I'm not going to be one of the men that just says, I was raised by my mama and things. I'm not that guy. My dad, I chose to live with my dad when I was in my high school years. And a lot of it was I saw how hard my mama was working, and I was eating a lot of food. I was an athlete then, and my mama was spending a lot, and I saw what I was doing to her as a burden. So I went to live with my dad, and the rest was history on that. But, my mom, of course, she worked hard to take care of us, particularly when my parents divorced. And I'm eternally grateful. I had two wonderful grandmothers in my life. Both of them were like the old school grandmamas. Neither one of them drove. They one grandmother worked at like grocery stores and just was loving to a large family. She had 7 kids, and she just taught me unconditional love because, when you got 7 kids and a bunch of cousins running around, I felt like she loved every single one of us. And I'm like, how can you do that? But she showed that you can love all of us. And most families, black, white, anyone, we all got cousins that we look at side-eye somehow. So
That's true.
she loved them, and God bless her, because she did. And then on my paternal side, a much smaller family. That grandmother raised my father with the help of my aunts. One particular aunt, I called her aunt sister. She's my godmother. She was a pharmacy. She was a pharmacy tech technically, but she was like the lead pharmacy at a hospital. And I used to go to work with her, and I saw the level of respect that she commanded in that hospital as a pharmacist, where doctors and physicians would come to her asking for what her thoughts were for treating patients and things. And she was a rock for me. So she had just an influence of sacrifice, because she never married, and she helped raise my dad when my grandfather was killed on the railroad when my dad was 9. It was my aunt that stayed and helped raise my dad, and a grandmother, her mother, who never worked. She was a stay-at-home mom. My aunt made those sacrifices, and I've just learned a lot from her. And then, I've got a sister who is just as crazy as all get up, good crazy, all just outgoing. And she's the one that kind of teaches me, I take things very seriously at times, and she kind of teaches me that, sometimes you gotta let your hair down and, have fun. And then I'll just go to, my nuclear family, my wife, who's been just really smart, but she changed my life at a time when, like most guys, we had different priorities. And I always say, I knew her when I first met her when she was in 8th grade, but I was only a sophomore in high school. So that ain't too bad. But we dated off and on, so I can't claim that we dated since she was in 8th grade. But in college, which would have been our 3rd time, she kind of gave me an ultimatum. And I knew that she was like marrying material, but she gave me that ultimatum. I had to make some decisions. And let's just say it probably was at a good time, because I probably was far from thinking I was going to settle down. But her attitude toward academics helped bring me back to center. After being a really great student and kind of losing my way, she brought me back to focus on academics, and then really helped reset my ability to excel in corporate. And she's been there for me through all of it. As I talked about corporate career, I'll just say I'm in another country, and she's sitting there with 3 young kids. And I remember flying back home on a late Friday, and she's like with hands and baby, I like, they yours. And I'm like, I'm tired. But in hindsight, she made a lot of sacrifices. So when I could reverse it and she could pursue her career in ministry, for me to be the husband to stay at home, she taught me a lot. And I could go on. I could probably do a whole show about the impact of my wife. But we have the ability to have a daughter, my middle child, which shares the same birth month and a day away from you, Jasmine, as you know.
May babies.
Yes, May babies. My
Taurus
daughter.
season.
Oh gosh, it's hilarious. So it's great. My daughter is she's such a joy, and she's an inspiration. As I said, she's a physician, and I saw how hard she worked to get that, MD. And as you know, there's testing every year, and just the work and the rigor and the hours and the things that she does as a physician just gives me respect. And I get really ticked off when I feel that women physicians are marginalized, knowing what her and her friends go through, So I'm a girl dad, but I'm probably one of those angry girl dads at times, because when I hear people talk about, how a female doctor isn't better than a another doctor or a minority doctor. And my daughter went to Meharry, and I'm proud of that. People would say, oh, she went to Meharry, she didn't get trained. I get pissed off at that. And I know what those doctors have gone through. I've went to that school. I met a lot of those young men and women. So they are trained with the best of them. And I feel that I take on the burden of wanting to represent the women that have been great for me in my life. I feel the burden to make sure that people respect them the way that they need to be respected. So the love that they gave to me and the strength that they gave to me, all those females are what showed me as a man I need to do as a man, but always know that I need to pay respect to the women in my life. So, I'm still a guy that opens doors and stuff like that. That's my mama and grandmama's making sure. And I open the door for my wife and daughter to this day. And if not, my boys do it. So that's that old school. And, at the end of the day, people criticize me for it, which, okay, but, people, I don't know where they come from with it. And that's how people have to enlighten me. But I was taught to be a gentleman. So I guess I'll die opening doors for women.
Yeah, and you shouldn't change that about you. And shout out to British. They say when you have a good woman by your side, you can go far. So
yes, amen. Yes, the Reverend Dr. Larceta British Stephen Hyrams. So she made sure she put her maiden name to pay honor to her family when she did her doctoral thesis. And, she asked me about it. I'm like, why would you not? So shout out to her and thank you for that. But, she leads me. She's by my side is how I'd say it. It's 100, 100. It ain't 50-50. It's 100 and 100. So we at it. So.
That's what's missing in today's dating age.
Yeah. You and I talk about. I'm like, I'm just too old school. So that's one thing. I have a lot of good.
Teach the men out here.
Yeah, sometimes they don't want to hear me, but I'll give them a dose. I'll give them a dose. And
yeah.
It's a lot of good men out there.
There are.
It's a lot of them. So I don't want to fall in that trap. But there's a lot of them that ain't. So we got some words for y'all, brothers.
And same with women. Good women and not so good women. So it goes both ways.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it sure does. It sure does. But, I laugh because I just had this conversation. Somebody said, yeah, I look at the glass half full. People are like, half full. I look at the glass full, and I want it to overflow. So it's a bunch of good folks out there, so we need to uplift them and then have them, help pass off and change the ones that ain't. So, or those that are not. So we're going to push that everybody wins, so to speak.
Kevin, the last question I have for you is, when it comes to women and girls, what do you think is holding most of them back from going after what they want in life?
I fear failure. I think that's for all genders. Fear of failure holds a lot of us back. And it took me a while to kind of at least pinpoint it for myself. But I think a lot of people are just fearful that they'll fail, and that's part of it. Another one is the risks of perceptions when you fail. And that's something I didn't have as much of during my time, but social media and how people present themselves today is very different because, I didn't have the influence of being on TikTok and the gram and, all these different social medias where you tend to see the best of everybody and all the time people doing well. And if you're not part of that club, and if you've taken a risk and it's very visible and you've not done well, people don't want to have that label, and that's something that I wish didn't exist and I'm a big fan, and social media is part of my life from a business standpoint. But that's one of the negative aspects of social media is that, you know, people will put you on blast when you fail and they attack you unnecessarily. And people are just concerned about that risk of that public perception of failing or just even taking the risk. And that's disheartening. But, as I say, if we get thick skin, maybe we'll get through it. But I think it's going to take some behavioral changes from people, as well. And then I think the other thing for women, and it's for men, so none of these are exclusively to women, but I think women can be a little bit more challenged in this, is to have authentic support teams, people that authentically support you, because I say, I call them gamers. There's a lot of gamers, and a lot of times people prey on women differently than how they prey on men. And even though women are strong, there's a perception that you may not be. And I can't change the reality of how people may perceive it, but I think women have to filter a lot more at times than men have to. And I don't think a lot of times women get a really authentic support team that helps you succeed or help you take those risks and help you fail and help you get back up and do other things. It's almost like people want something from you, while you're doing it. And that's not authentic. If you're always looking for the payback, then, the reality is, are you really helping them authentically or not? Because help them because they need the help. And I think women tend to have people that want something from you, more so than sometimes men have to be subject to that same thing. And again, it's not to say it don't happen to guys, but I think women have that little bit more of a challenge. And I felt like if you had that great support team, you'll take those risks and have people that'll really help you for helping you. And none of us do it alone. So you really need that support team. And I encourage you and I talk about it, I may be a mentor, but you need to have other mentors. You need to have people that's going to be in your corner and help you. And I feel like when I listen to, people that that are frustrated with their progress, a lot of times is that they don't have that support structure. So I encourage all of your audience to build a good coalition of people that really care about you and want to support you. And you'll really find that support team will be there in those roughest times to keep you focused and do those resets and keep advancing and getting better. And I really hope that all of you, have that, because that's important. So those are probably my main things. There are probably others, but those come top of mind.
Nice. Those are really good things to point out. And especially the support structure is such a huge one. I talked about it too on my podcast. That's something that you want to have for anything that you go after in life that might be unconventional or different, or even if it's just, just a big dream or goal, you definitely need to have that support system.
Yeah, agree.
Well, thank you so much, Kevin. This has been amazing. I am actually going to do some rapid fire. It's going to be,
okay.
Yeah, I didn't send you these before. So I'm just going to say a statement and you're going to just blurt out whatever is the thing that comes to mind.
Okay. All right. I'm going to make sure it's clean too. So let's do it.
Yes. Let's make sure it's clean. Although we can edit stuff out if you need to.
That's all right. I told you there's a part of me that, some things come out that I need to work on. And as I say, having a preacher for a wife, I got to make sure that the brand stays whole.
She keeps you straight.
She does. All right.
Okay. Here we go. What is the greatest invention ever made in your opinion?
The wheel.
The what?
The wheel.
The wheel, like the actual wheel.
Yeah, somebody had to invent the wheel. Just
That's
think of what we
true.
would be doing if we didn't.
Be on horses still. Yeah.
Yeah, baby. You know, we'd be all riding horses, but just think of being able to put some wheels on something and pull more things. But
Mm.
that's a great question, but I could just see, the wheel from an invention, because the other stuff I think just kind of evolved with humanity. But we didn't invent fire; we discovered fire, but we made the wheel. So,
Mm. Okay. I like that. Not what I was expecting, but I love it. What is your biggest branding trend right now? Or what do you think is the biggest branding trend?
ooh, that's a good one. I keep coming back to an authentic voice, and just a real quick, people talk about that people are too politically correct and just a lot of different things. And we got so many bright people that's out here. And it's like, if you give credit to people that's saying things that they truly believe, don't criticize them, take them for what they're saying and process it and move on. Because ultimately, authenticity is I think big for brands nowadays, and in a world where people lie quite a bit, um, if we're able to filter and find out truly what they're about, authenticity is a big brand. So I know with clients, when we talk about things, we talk about being true to your core values and things. So be authentic. So that's what my big trend would be for brand.
Yeah. Awesome. And then on the flip side, what is the biggest digital trend right now?
Ooh, well, AI is part of digital, so everything is AI. AI is hitting everything, and I'm a big fan of AI. But I'm also, because I'm a geek, well, I say I'm a geek, so real geeks probably don't say they're geeks, so I need to shut up. It's AI because of the influences of AI in the digital world and everything we do. So that's a huge thing.
Definitely the biggest thing that I've been hearing. The next one is if you could dance with anyone famous or not, who would it be?
Dance with anybody famous. They have to be alive?
No, it could be anyone, dead or alive.
All right. I would love to
Or,
dance.
and I'm sorry, famous or not famous. It could be
Yeah,
famous or
that's
not
fine.
famous.
Because I was gonna say fame is in the eye of the beholder. So to me,
Hmm.
I would love to dance with my mother and grandmothers and my aunts, and we just have like this like circle dance, and it's probably not a dance, but just to be with them. 'Cause, I smile every time I think of them, and if I could do that and have them back, it would be so awesome to be with them again. So that would be awesome. And I can't just pick one. So it'd be like, like the at a wedding you get to dance with your mama. I'd
Hmm.
have all my mamas and aunts together, and
Oh, I love that.
that would be like awesome. That'd be
That's
awesome.
incredible. When was the last time you danced your heart out?
Oh, all right. Last time, wow, yeah. So this is bad. So I done told you like I done had like 8 surgeries on my knees, so my mobility isn't what it used to be. But I've got a friend that has a boat, and we were on Lake Michigan over a weekend, and British and I. So he had a little bit of adult beverages, and British loves dancing, and she convinced me to get up and dance, and we're like on the dock with they've got their boats, and it's a great community off Lake Michigan, and we danced on the dock, and I don't think I've danced that much in ages, but I had such a good time. I paid for it the next day, and dancing your heart out is relative because my moves are nowhere near like I envisioned they could be, but it was fun, and I hadn't danced like that in ages. And I used to love dancing, but absent of a new life with restrictions, doesn't have me dancing. But I had such a good time.
How long ago was that?
That was last summer. We were
Oh,
there.
okay.
Yes.
I
So
love it.
it was really cool. I want to do it. Matter of fact, I'm talking about how can I do it again this year, to be
Hey,
honest.
summer's around the corner. Might as well.
It is. And they taking their boats out on Lake Michigan right about now. So it's a good time to do it.
Perfect time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Name 3 people you think Gen Zers should follow for the best advice on navigating career and life.
All right. So that's one that's easy. So, Jasmine Neely is one.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, I know you would. The second one is Reverend Dr. Larcita British Hyrams. She's at Presbyterian College. I think that would be a good one because she's well balanced. That third one is interesting. If I were to be forthright, I think I'm gonna recommend that we follow a different one, and that's gonna be our new Pope, Leo.
Hmm.
And
Different.
yeah,
He's American.
he's American, a Chicago native or a born Chicagoan.
There you go.
And as a person that grew up in the Catholic Church, altar boy, all of that, before I went to public school, like I said, I've been code switching all my life. So I'm a master code switcher. I think the time of the environment today and the things that I've heard the Pope start to talk about, 2 or 3 of the people that I named are people that have strong religious influences, and I think those are really important, today. I've got a number of other ministers that do a great job. Reverend Moss at Trinity in Chicago, Trinity United Church of Christ. My mom goes to that church, and he does a segment 5 minutes after he closes service to really get into some political justice, some equal justice and civil rights things. He's good. But if I had to go to 3, I just think that the following that the new Pope has, the energy that's there, and I'm not necessarily saying you got to follow the Catholic faith, but I'm asking for your audience to consider, or the Gen Zers, to really look for, religious contacts to help guide us in our next wave. And then particularly with AI coming in to the fold, we need to keep humanity as a core theme in what we do, because it'll be really easy to lose some of that. That's in my opinion. So,
Awesome. Does the Pope have an Instagram page?
I think he does. I thought he does. And I'll just say I don't do X, so I hope he's got an Instagram page.
I might have to check that out.
Yeah, yeah. And I know I said you should do it, and I ain't done it myself, but I will, because I want to see what he does. And he's got a platform, as you know, with everything going on now. I think Gen Z should just be aware of what's being said from the church. And, Gen Zers, and you and I talk about it, the world is not just entertainment. We've got to stay connected in all aspects of what's going on around us. And, I had this thing where we talk about the youth. The youth is not just our tomorrow, but the youth is our today. So the more enlightened and well-rounded our youth are, the better us older people are going to be. Not only can we communicate with you about a variety of things, but it allows you to make your own decisions and not just take what we say for granted or as gospel, so to speak. You get to fact check us, make your own decisions, and you're of that point where you will be the ones that are leading, as a lot of us are, moved out. You're the ones making policy. You're the ones doing those things. So not only you're the future, you're the today, but there's a responsibility for that. And that means that, it ain't just all TikTok videos that are dancing and stuff, which are good, but you got to have a responsibility to follow a lot of things. So how the world works.
Yeah. In one sentence or less, what can you tell us about what's next for Kevin Hyrams?
The power of ampersand, meaning there'll be additional things that I get to do in areas that I probably haven't even envisioned. So I have no limiters now. I have no fear of things moving forward. So if I tell you I've skydived, then believe it, because I would have done it. But I'll say the sentence is, you'll see me working with you again, Jasmine, and your viewers will see me again in some capacity. So
Okay.
So there it is.
Hey,
That's
I accept it.
Great.
And then lastly, since this podcast is called The Imperfect, or you could look at it two ways, imperfect or I'm perfect, just noting that we are all imperfect, but we're perfect in our own ways. We're perfectly imperfect. How are you imperfect?
Oh, now that's a whole show. I exist imperfectly. I do things every day that are not right. And the fact that I say I could do things better tells me that I've made mistakes along the way, but I just say every day I wake up, I do something that's imperfect. It's just part of who we are, whether it be selfish reasons or misinterpreting things. So I exist imperfectly, and that's me. But thank goodness, as a person of faith, I am forgiven if I seek it. I'm going to get up and keep moving.
Hey, that's all you can do. Life goes on, right?
That's right. That's right.
Kevin Hyrams, thank you so much for coming on to the Imperfect Cheerleader podcast. Where can people find you if they want to see and hear more about you? Even though you already said that people are going to see more of you, but
yes,
tell us where we can find you.
Oh gosh, because I'll say they can find me by coming to you first, and then then you can connect it. But most of my social media handles are at KR Hyrams. So you'll see me on all of those. And then on LinkedIn, which is where I'm mostly on, you don't need the KR. So it's at Hyrams on LinkedIn. And then on my business, you can just Google SideReal Global and you'll get, all of the companies under that banner. But, the main things are you can get me on LinkedIn at Hyrams, Hyrams. You'll find me there. And please put a note. That's kind of a thing. And I would love it if you say you listen to the Imperfect Cheerleader podcast. That gives me a reference of how we are connected. And we will stay connected on that aspect. But, in the end, I'm really hoping that they support you and everything that you do, Jasmine, because that allows for me to see them in their setting and, I'll support you. And by means, support them through what you're doing. So there that is.
Kevin, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast. It's been amazing. I'm sure that the listeners have taken so much away from this. So thank you.
I hope so. You know me, I'll look at the count. So please build the count, tell your friends. But it's been a pleasure. It's an honor, and I'll just say to your audience, male, female in the dance space, your time is now. And I want you to really take this opportunity to realize your dreams and never give up. So there it is.
Thank you.
You. All right.
Thank you so much for tuning in to the Imperfect Cheerleader podcast. Taking the time to listen while you're busy with all of life's responsibilities means the world to me. If you enjoyed this episode, here are a few ways you can support ICP. Number 1, hit the subscribe button so you always get newly released episodes and never miss them. Number 2, take a screenshot of the episode you listened to and tag at the professional cheerleader on Instagram. We love to repost your tags and shout you out in our stories. Number 3, write a review. This is the best way to show your support for the podcast and helps us bring on even better guests, interviews, and topics. I hope you have a wonderful day, morning, or night, wherever you may be, and are continuing to work towards your goals of becoming a professional cheerleader, dancer, or just someone who loves to move. I'll see you later on another episode of the Imperfect Cheerleader podcast. Toodles for now.